Hello everyone, welcome to today's lesson. Today we will be looking at programming with PHP. By the end of this course, we want to be able to explain how to retrieve data when our users fill them and then click the submit button. And then we will move to how to create a database using MySQL. And then after that, we would now look at how to save that data that we were able to retrieve from the submitted form into our database. Then we will move on to how to retrieve that data from the database and then display it in a list. And then we will look at how to make updates to the information that is being displayed in the list, and then also how to eventually delete that data from the list. So this is a simple tutorial to walk through what we call the CRUD operations of a very simple form. So typically, when you have your HTML form, the user will fill out that form, and then when the user clicks on the submit button, the form will be submitted using an HTTP post request to the server. And then once this request is sent to the server receives the information. We are going to do some validation, and it is at this point that we are going to save the information into a MySQL database. And then once the data is eventually saved in the MySQL database, we will decide what to do next from there. So let's look at the form that we want to use in this tutorial. So this would be a very simple form that contains first name, last name, email, phone number, and then a comment section. So this is a very basic form, but this would help us to see how to go through these simple operations of creating or saving data in the database, retrieving the data, updating the data, and eventually deleting the data. All right, so this is the point where we create a new project. So I'm going to create a new project by clicking on new folder and then call my project CRUD. After creating the folder called CRUD, I'm now going to create the page on which the form would be. So I'm going to, whilst I have selected the CRUD folder, I'm going to click on new file and type add.php and hit enter. And so this creates the add page. This is where I'm going to create my form. So I'm just going to go ahead and then create my form. I didn't waste time or spend time on creating the form because I assume that we all have gone through the HTML tutorials, and so we know how to create basic form. So this is a very basic form that contains first name, last name, email address, phone number, and then a comment section. But things that I want you to take note of is that this action attribute is what is going to define when the user clicks the submit button, where should the data go to. So like we saw earlier on, whenever the user clicks submit, the front end, which is the interface that the user is filling, submits the data that has been filled to the back end. So in this case, when we write save.php, we mean that we are going to create a page called save.php, which would receive, which is the back end that will receive the data that the user has filled. And then here we are going to define the HTTP method that will be used to submit the data. So there are two main types. There is the post and then there is the get. The post usually is very visible to the user. The get usually is visible to the user, but the post is invisible to the user when you click submit. And so because of, for security reasons, we may want to hide the data until it gets to the back end. And so we are using what? The post method. So the two main things that I want you to take note from here is that the action is what defines where the data would go to, and the method is what defines what method the HTTP request would be sent. And so let's go ahead and create our save. Let's go ahead and create our save.php. So I'm going to create save.php and then hit enter. And so on the save.php, this is where the user form or the form data would be sent to. And so let us start our PHP code here. We start our PHP code by start defining our PHP tag. So this is the PHP tag. Always, before you write your PHP code, make sure that you have this tag, and all your code should sit in between this. So what I want us to do first is to see if whatever the user has filled would actually come to this page. So we are going to write echo, which is in terms of PHP, it means display. And so we are going to display the post method. Remember, we are using the post method. So the post method, which is an array, so you should go into the post array, and then we are looking for the item with the key first name. So for instance, if we want to display the first name, we are going to go back to our form, and then here the name attribute, whatever we put there should be exactly the same thing as what we use as our key in the post array. So I just copied and I pasted exactly what I had here, which is the name attribute of the input element. So I just copied this, and then now I'm coming here, and then when I write post, then the key first name. And so what I'm saying is that display what is at the array with the key first name. And so let us run this and see if this actually gives us the expected results. So I have come to my form by typing localhost. So localhost will take me to my document root / the name of my project, which is CRAD, / the name of my file, which I actually want to access, which is add.php. And so now that I've come here, I'll go ahead and fill this, and then I'm filling all the other elements just because I have validation on the form. But what we actually want is just to test to see if what we filled in the first name would actually come. And so I'm going to submit. And so like you can see, whatever I entered in the first name field has been displayed here. So that tells us that it is true that whatever we entered has been submitted to the save.php file. Having this in mind, what we are going to do is we are going to create variables to store all the different data that is coming, and then now see how we can save it into our database. So just for the sake of consistency, what I'm going to do is that for each of the arrays that I'm going to create, I would actually use exactly the name that I use. So for instance, I'll use first name, I'll copy the first name, and then come here and then create a variable, call it first name, and then now equate it to post first name. So what I'm saying is that what this line actually means is that create a variable, call it first name, and then assign whatever the user entered into first name into it. So I'm just using the same name for consistency's sake, but you can actually call your variable anything that you want. So I'll just go ahead and do the same for last name. So I'll come to my HTML form, go to where my name is, copy the name that I used, come here, create a variable with that same name, and then assign it to a post variable. So here I'm saying that take last name, which was submitted in the post array or post global variable, and then assign it to my variable called last name here. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same for all the other elements. So now I've gone ahead to create the various variables to hold the post items that are coming. So now I've received all the form data into their corresponding variables, but I've also gone ahead to echo all of them so that I want to actually see if what I received is actually sitting in the variable. So let's go ahead and then see if we'll fill the form and see all the data that we filled the form with. So here on my form, I've gone ahead to fill this form, and then I'm going to click on submit. And when I click on submit, you could see that the first name is there, the last name is there, the email address is there, the phone number is there, and then whatever I put in the comment section is also there, telling us that yes, our data has actually been received. So now that our data has been received, the next thing we want to do is that we need to put in some validation. What do we mean by validation? We don't want anybody to hit this page and then start displaying whatever is there. We only want to receive the post element if somebody has actually hit the submit button. How do we know that somebody has hit the submit button? By checking the HTTP method. If it contains post, then it means that somebody has actually posted to this page. So what we are going to do is to put an if statement and then check the HTTP request type if it is equal to post. So what we are saying is that if our server request method is equal to post, then we should go ahead and then do what is here. So it means that we are only going to receive what is inside the post only if we have a post in our request method. And so I'm going to go here and then close this. Thank you for your time. We have just completed the first outcome of the course, and we look forward to completing the rest. So in our next video, we'll look at how to create a MySQL database. Thank you so much for your time. See you in the next video.